I want you to think about your favorite teacher. I think everyone has one. Think about it for a second. Who is that? My favorite teacher, and a lot of you know her, is Mrs. McGinnis, back in 3rd grade, 1999, in Simon Elementary. And that's always the answer to my question. But I don't often think of why she was my favorite teacher. I don't really remember any lessons. I don't remember the math lesson from September, October. I don't remember the certain classroom rituals she had, or the little songs like 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. I don't remember any of that. I remember a feeling. I had this really special feeling that she wanted me in her class, that she really enjoyed when I was there. And that I had the sense, I don't know if it's true, that she'd be sad if I was gone for a day. I think better described as love. I felt like there was love there. The reason I bring this up is because teachers have an incalculable impact on the students they have in their care. Their lessons don't, their classrooms don't, their setup doesn't. They do. So much so that 20 years ago, to this day, 20 years ago, I had Mrs. McGinnis, and here I am talking about her in this room. So what are we to say about Mrs. Murray? How did she make her students feel? What will her students say in 20 years when they're giving a speech? I don't know, I was never a student, but I lived with her for probably longer than she would have liked. Thank you. So let's look at the facts. What kind of teacher was she? First point, she worked herself to the point of falling asleep almost immediately after making sure her family was fed, loved, and validated, sometimes as early as 6 or 7 p.m. at night. And this is not your typical family. This is a very needy son, daughter, and husband. Add in some needy students, and you realize that she gave all day until she could not give anymore. She gave up her lunchtime and break time to be with students who needed some extra love, often counseling and mothering during contracted break times. Contracts and guidelines didn't matter to Mrs. Murray. Her students did. She gave up her lunch to students who needed food. I remember times when she would come home from school and she'd be starving and going through the cabinets. I said, "Didn't you eat?" She's like, "No, I gave it to my student." What kind of teacher does that? That's a pretty special teacher right there. She'd rather go hungry than her students go hungry. She would spend a significant portion of her weekend making sure she was ready to teach quality lessons the following week, sacrificing what she loved most, her family, time with her family, to give to her students, to make sure they had quality education. This is not a teacher who maybe put a movie on all the time or just put on YouTube. This is a teacher who was actively involved in her teaching. She would advocate for her kids, whether it was with the fellow teacher, a principal, or the school board. Nothing got between her and her students. She taught and loved students that a lot of people chose not to see in our society. Students with Down syndrome, autism, physical and mental handicaps, spending many years teaching in special education classrooms. Even when she taught general education, she would often be the first teacher the special ed kids were sent to because everyone knew that Mrs. Murray knew how to handle it. She taught students regardless of class, race, or socioeconomic status. She told me that her students in one school district, Harlem, she worked at would come from homes that were so poor that their floors were packed dirt at home. She was so excited several years ago, the hurricane in Puerto Rico, when she had a student come from Puerto Rico. She was so excited to learn some Spanish or dusted off what she had and learning what he liked, and she just went all out for this little kid. She would watch Star Wars with me. She would do all these nerdy things with me just so she could talk to her other little nerdy students that were just like me. This small portion of feats that Mrs. Murray has showcased over her 30-plus years of teaching still leaves the question, how does she make kids feel? Frankly, I don't have an answer, but I think my mom does. I was talking to her and my dad when I visited home a couple months ago, and as usual, my dad was giving her a hard time about spending too much time at school. That he loved, "Oh, you're going to school again? It's Sunday, just relax, watch the Bears with me." Again, very needy family. If you haven't seen my mom talk to my dad, she gets this look on her face like she's about to tell him once and for all how it's gonna be. I'm not making this up for this story. Several months ago, she looked at him and said, "Mark, I'm their second mother." I think it's a pretty fitting answer to that question. I don't think her profession has really been teaching all these years, although hundreds of kids are smarter because of her. I think her job title is mom, aside from her students calling her as much with a slip of the tongue. I don't know how else to describe her actions toward her students or how they make them feel. And I think my sister and I, we've always realized that she's too good for just us. We have to share. We're at the top of the list, mainly me. And is very close behind. So as we celebrate the retirement of this amazing woman, I think I do know what her students will be saying about her in 20 years when they're up where I am. So on behalf of me, my sister, and all of our siblings that know and love Mrs. Murray from Winnebago, Harlem, and German Valley schools, we simply say, well done, Mom, we love you.